Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us for this JumpCloud webinar. The topic today is unifying single sign-on and multi-factor authentication to reduce IT complexity. So, little housekeeping. So if you have any questions, send them in the chat. We will get to as many as we can within the time that we've got. If we don't get it today, we will follow up with you, one-on-one specifically to cover it. But, ask away and we will cover what you need. All right, there's a couple of upcoming JumpCloud events that you may be interested in. These links will be live links in the deck that you receive after this webinar is over. So, feel free to register for any of these if they're of interest to you, and hopefully they will be. All right, let's get started with who we are. So my name's Todd Peterson. I'm the Principal Product Marketing Manager at JumpCloud in charge of Identity and Access Management. I'll be your host today, and you probably won't hear from me very much, which is a good thing. With us is Glenn and Tyler, and I'll let each of them introduce themselves, what their role is, and what they do. So why don't you go first, Glenn?
Yeah, for sure. Glenn Attridge, VP Technology at Firmex. We'll get into a little bit more about Firmex in upcoming slides. I've been there about 7 years and take care of everything from infrastructure hosting all the way to security and compliance.
Sweet, thanks. Go ahead, Tyler.
Yeah, glad to be here. My name's Tyler Coltis. I've also been at JumpCloud for just about 7 years, so 7-year gang. These days, I am a solution consultant on our pre-sales engineering team. So just here to add a little bit of flavor for how everybody is using JumpCloud and how to make the best use of your account.
Awesome, thanks, Tyler. And just so everyone knows, Tyler is on probation because he does not have a beard, so he will not be able to participate fully in this. But we'll see what we can do. All right, so let's get started. So we're going to talk about the things that Glenn went through with Firmex and how they got to, a pretty ideal state for their identity management, device management, for all the things that are kind of hard to do as you transition to the cloud. So there's your agenda. You don't need to pay attention to that because we'll be covering each of those as they come up. So we'll start out with, Glenn, can you tell us who Firmex is and, just give us the kind of a lay of the land of who you guys are and, why this, discussion we're having is important to you.
Right, for sure. Up on the slide, you see the back of the napkin kind of description of what Firmex is, but generally we're a global SaaS-based data room provider. People come to us when the standard file and document sharing solutions don't fit their needs. They need a more secure, more stable platform. Some of the different areas that use us: M&A, fundraising, legal. We're a smaller team, headquartered in Toronto, under 200 people, and we have an additional sales office that we support out in the UK.
Awesome. So it sounds like you guys are pretty, you lean heavily towards the security and compliance side as far as your IT needs. You're not just your run-of-the-mill mom and pop shop that just needs people to access something sometimes. Is that accurate?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have people that come to us when their use cases. I have a whole bunch of highly confidential materials that I need to share with, either a single third party or multiple third parties. I want to make sure that I can control when they have access, where they have access, revoke that access if I need to, and then have a reporting and logging around who's accessed what, where, and when.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. So let's talk a little bit about, so prior to implementing JumpCloud solutions, tell us a little bit about what your world looked like from an IT perspective. Just give us the lay of the land of, what systems you had, what was missing, what your challenges were, just what were you guys before we came into the picture?
Yeah, for sure. So initially, we were our service was colo hosted, as many SaaS operations were before the great move to the cloud. We had on-prem AD, in the co-location AD, and we even had another IDP solution. So we had SSO and MFA going on. These were requirements that kind of came in from some of our clients, part of security and compliance. People wanted to make sure that as we provided access to different environments and different applications, that we were ensuring the people that had access were who they were. So moving kind of forward, this is during and after implementing JumpCloud. We moved towards securing employee endpoints, and then later, when COVID happened, our organization changed dramatically. We transitioned all employees from on-prem to a fully remote workforce, and we'll be able to kind of talk through how JumpCloud helped us with that at that point.
Awesome. And are you staying a fully remote workforce?
Yes, correct. Yes.
Awesome. Cool. So Tyler, looking at this Firmex environment, is this unusual? Do you see a lot of, people that are kind of in this same situation? What's different? What's similar about what they've got and what you see, with the majority of people you talk to?
Absolutely. I think that similar environments, and like Glenn said, this move to the cloud was already happening before COVID, but that was really a forcing function. So this is a really prototypical JumpCloud story. You've got lots of different assets, you've got users all over the world, and really struggling to kind of leverage this hybrid model. How are you going to connect people to things that might exist in a co-location center when they have no way of getting back into the actual domain without a VPN? So this is a really great use case, but there's a lot of other things that we can support as well. It's a very flexible platform.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. So it sounds like most of the people on this at least can relate to a lot of the things that we're going to talk about. So that's awesome. All right. So Glenn, at this point, before we were involved, what were the challenges that you had? And, was there a compelling event or just a kind of a buildup over time? What got you to the point where you looked like you needed to solve this problem in a different way? Can you talk about that?
Yeah, for sure. So, we were already set up at the organization level for that SSO use case and the MFA and getting access to the different environments. But when we look to grow our service within our cloud provider, we were really challenged, and some of it was at that time a limited service offering. The directory service wasn't available in the region that we needed it to be. Cross-region replication was difficult and a challenge at that time. And it just really was a case of we'd kind of have to roll our own AD, which would mean we'd have to manage that, maintain that, run it on EC2 images. And that just wasn't the direction that we really wanted to go. We wanted to embrace kind of serverless technology and the services that are self-managed to reduce the burden on our teams. So there was that high cost, high maintenance. So when we looked to kind of think about how we were going to solve this problem, the idea around moving that source of truth for our directory from these in-region directory servers into a cloud-based service. So we wanted to have that as a single source of truth and then have everything kind of read down from that.
Yeah, so it sounds like AD doesn't meet your modern needs, but you can't get rid of it. Is that accurate?
Yeah. So there's some of the AD is still there, but more legacy. And as we've transitioned more fully into cloud, yes, it didn't fit our needs, and we've transitioned totally away from it.
So eventually you will be off of AD at some point?
Yes, yes, absolutely.
Okay, cool. So Tyler, can you talk a little bit about the limitations of AD? Because I think most people are in the boat where they've got it, and they really can't live without it yet. But what are the limitations? I know that AD was, introduced more than 20 years ago. It didn't have the cloud in mind at all when it was born, and it kind of doesn't still. And so can you talk a little bit about the challenges that people with AD face, and then we'll get into a little later how we can overcome those?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that Active Directory is a great service, but isn't necessarily equipped for the situation that we find ourselves in, where people are trying to leverage the technology that makes most sense for them, which might not always be Microsoft services. So you run into a challenge of integrating maybe your Mac or your Linux devices with AD. That's pretty difficult without a third-party solution. You also run into challenges for facilitating remote work, or even just a global expansion. So if you're opening up an office in the APAC region, but your headquarters is here in the United States, you're kind of confronted with this problem of, do I set up another Active Directory domain all across the world, and how am I supposed to network it in? So it is a multiplicative problem. The deeper that you go with Active Directory, the more Active Directory that you need. And it's not going to necessarily allow people to make the choices that make most sense for their business. So those are broad brushstrokes challenges, but it's really, you want to get rid of this CapEx in all of the server infrastructure itself. You don't want to be maintaining all of these servers, and you might not want to just go all in with a Microsoft suite of products. And something like JumpCloud allows you to make the right choices for your business, being very vendor neutral or vendor agnostic.
Yeah, I think that there's a temptation on a lot of people's minds that, I've got AD, I can't get rid of it, and so I am locked into Microsoft for my future, meaning that, Azure is the only way they can go to the cloud, which, isn't true. That's what we're here for, is to help kind of open the world and allow people to go to the cloud in the way that they want. If they want to use Google, if they want to use Amazon, whatever, that they can do that, what's best for them, not necessarily what's best for the decision they made 20 years ago when they put Active Directory in. So cool. All right. So Glenn, in this, looking for the solution, to evolve and get better, what were the things that you absolutely had to have? What were you looking for?
Right. Yeah. Just the key requirement here was to move the directory up into cloud. And then we just really didn't want to have to sync that back down to any type of directory down on the ground. And then, part of this, we searched through a bunch of different vendors, including our current IDP provider. And the common thread through all of them was, sure, we can have a cloud directory, but where's it going to land? And these 2 points really kind of were the key pieces for us. JumpCloud was the only solution, and still is to my knowledge, that was able to satisfy these, where we could have this cloud-based directory service and be able to push things down to our endpoints and manage everything from that directory service.
Mm-hmm. So we'll go to Tyler again. So Tyler, can you just talk real briefly about the difference between kind of an open directory platform like what JumpCloud offers and the directory associated with something like a single sign-on offering, or a specific, I don't know, application, because everything needs a directory, but what's the difference between the open directory platform in the cloud and these others that makes it the kind of the master option to control all this other stuff better?
Yeah, people play a little fast and loose with what a directory is. So there's a very narrow conception of a directory, which is my users are in a list somewhere. But that doesn't really capture what people expect, especially when you view this through the historical lens of what Active Directory was doing. It was kind of your answer for everything. So we are taking a much more holistic approach here. A directory needs to not just be an identity store, but connect that identity, this single identity, to everything, like Glenn is talking about. It needs to touch your devices. It needs to touch your web applications, your legacy infrastructure. Like everybody has printers still, or most people have printers still, or just the network itself, getting access into Wi-Fi while still giving you all of that different reporting and telemetry of who's doing what. So when you take the broader view here, that's much more, the directory that JumpCloud talks about, not just a user store.
Right. So if I'm hearing you correctly, it's kind of the avoiding the temptation to say that, well, if my authentication is unified, so if I've got single sign-on, my directory problem is solved, and that's absolutely not the case, because you've got authorization to deal with, you've got administrative stuff to deal with, you've got audit stuff to deal with. So you need to be able to touch all sides of the identity and in a most unified way possible. Am I interpreting that correctly?
It's single sign-on for everything.
Yeah.
Terms get defined here where single sign-on is just for web apps. No, you need to be able to extend this identity everywhere. So yeah, you're spot on.
Okay, cool. All right, so Glenn, talk us through the process of how you went from knowing you needed something to how you actually decided what you were going to use.
Yeah, for sure. So, first step obviously is, without expanding your tool set, try to work with what you have. So, we worked with our current IDP provider, tried to understand how they would solve the solution, found out it ended up needing that 80 to sync with, so they just didn't fit. Took a look at the Azure at that time, and I don't know if they've moved past that. Again, it was not a true fully functioned cloud directory that would solve these problems. You needed something on the ground to enforce that GPO and these kind of things. So, JumpCloud was at that time the solution provider that was able to answer this for us. Here we could put all of the users that needed access to the environments in our cloud, and then we could add them to this. We could add those users to this directory service. We could also add the devices to this directory service, and we worked through a POC there, and we're able to understand that this solution actually fit the needs that we were looking for.
Mm-hmm. How long ago was this? When did you adopt JumpCloud?
JumpCloud, I believe we were 2016, maybe
Okay.
2017, around that area. And this was just the initial footprint. At that time, we made good use of the 10 free users forever to run our POC. And, we had during that time, we had a small number of people that needed access. And that was really helpful for us to kind of get it off the ground, because small teams sometimes can't justify that, like, hey, I've already got something in place and then I want to go try something out, and then it's very time limited. So that really came in handy for a small org like us at that time.
Mm-hmm. So Tyler, as you're out dealing with people similar to Firmex that are looking to solve these problems, my assumption would be that often they're looking, their view is too narrow. Like they may just be trying to solve a single sign-on problem, or they may just be trying to solve a device management problem, but the ability to expand that to kind of solve the underlying identity and directory challenge is good. As you're talking to these people, what's the main kind of aha moment that they get? Is it the lack of complexity? Is it the affordability? Is it the cloudness? What's the usual thing that tips the scales and says, oh, this is an amazing way to solve this problem?
Yeah, I rarely do people search Google for what is my comprehensive everything cloud directory. Like, you've got very discrete problems. I need to enforce multi-factor on my device. I need to do single sign-on. Just, you're trying to do something that that is going to solve an immediate business need. But part of this is what Glenn was talking about. We're giving you a fully featured and fully supported account So once you get in, you test out single sign-on and you realize there's a really easy interface to start adding in my devices. There's a really easy way in just 3 clicks for me to spin up a Radius server. If you've ever had to do that yourself, this is about as simple as it gets. Give us your IP address and you're done, right? So yeah, people come in looking for one thing, but in this freemium model, you quickly realize whether you're doing this on your own or talking to somebody like me, that you get so much more value. You get this integrated reporting. You get this better end user experience by putting more resources under control of this comprehensive directory.
Yeah, I like to think of it as, you solve the immediate problem, but you solve it in a way that that next problem that you didn't anticipate is going to be solved or much easier to solve because you've laid the foundation correctly.
Yeah, and it makes it a lot easier. Like, let's just solve the immediate problem first. We're not going to force you to do this, migration all at once. It's actually not like a giant monolithic directory migration is scary for good reason. So do what matters first, and then over time, when your contracts expire, whatever it is, start moving things over and make the most of the JumpCloud platform.
Sweet.
That's a really great point, Tyler. Like if my decision here was, hey, I have to rip out all of the thing that I have and then figure out how it's gonna solve that plus this new use case, it would have been much more difficult. So having that little piece was really an important part of the decision-making process.
Yeah, that's a excellent point. That I think if everybody had all the money, all the time, and all the resources in the world, they would rip everything out and start fresh with the right thing. But no one does, and so we need to be able to live with the decisions of the past, but in a way that doesn't obstruct our progress to what we want to get accomplished in the future. All right, so Glenn, tell us now, so you've made the decision to go with JumpCloud. How did it get implemented? What does it look like? Talk us through kind of the modern architecture you now have and the way things are set up.
Sure. After we had solved our initial specific need, providing this cloud-based directory for our cloud service, over time, we would look at this and say, okay, well, what's the overlap of this? And over years, our team grows and more people are going into JumpCloud and consuming. And then there's this overlap with our current IDP, and I'm like, oh, wait a minute, we could solve this with this common tool. And some of it, quite honestly, was JumpCloud was growing during that time frame and filling in some of the gap features that we already had. So there came a point where I believe late 2019, where it was like, okay, this is the time where we've got enough here and we've grown enough in JumpCloud that we're gonna migrate these and have JumpCloud take the role of everything. Everything from full Radius, the IAM user groups in AWS, our SSO for our web apps, the MFA. We had a brief window where people were missing their MFA push app, but JumpCloud came in and solved that and rolled that back out. So just super happy to have that parity these days.
Awesome. So Tyler, what is it about the JumpCloud platform that allowed Glenn to accomplish this? Can you talk us through kind of a little bit of the maybe not technical, but well, maybe technical, of how the JumpCloud platform is designed to be able to support this kind of single source of the truth thing and all these various workloads that it's able to help kind of streamline?
It's an army of engineers. So we release a crazy amount of product. Just from my own personal experience, it's difficult sometimes for even us to keep up with all the different things that we're releasing. So part of it is just taking a look at what are the customer stories. that we want to satisfy. It's not a focus on let's build features, it's let's solve problems. So you need something, not just managing a device like Windows, let's do it for every operating system. Let's not just build a library of single sign-on applications where maybe if we don't have it, you can't use it. Let's make a flexible approach where if it supports SAML, if it supports Skim, then it works with JumpCloud. So a lot of this is just embracing open protocols and going broad enough on all of the different features from MFA to everything else that Glenn has talked about to really give you full coverage. So we go broad and then we go deep. And I think Glenn has experienced this firsthand. I was here in 2016 too, and it is much, much deeper in terms of everything that you can do. So you can now pass, a SOC 2 audit just by using native JumpCloud features.
Well, and I think that that's kind of the shift in thinking for most people is, a SaaS solution, you can take advantage of new features and, capabilities or even additional modules or stuff it almost immediately. Whereas, in the old world, if you needed to integrate your Active Directory with Radius, you'd have to go buy something, install it, test it, retest it, deploy it, fix whatever you did wrong. It's a big, long, complicated process, and you're probably not even going to get it right. Whereas here, everything's almost preset for success. I think if I'm expressing what I mean to say, that SaaS has such big advantages, particularly in these important and fluid things like identity and access.
Yeah, you don't need to be a Microsoft certified engineer to run JumpCloud. It's a very intuitive platform. We teach math teachers or the administrator that is in your office in a small business to do everything that they need to do. It's a very simple point and click interface. So easy to get started and broad enough to do what you need.
Yeah. So Glenn, diverting a little bit from the plan here, can you talk through Firmex's strategy and opinion on go forward technology? It sounds like you're cloud, 100% cloud going forward, but talk to us about why that is and how things unrelated to JumpCloud are impacted by that decision to go cloud.
Yeah, so great question. Definitely a little bit different direction, but our decision to go cloud, we were initially hesitant, and I'm talking back a number of years now, dating myself, but we kind of followed what our clients were comfortable with, and at a certain point there was a shift where it went from I'm not sure about this cloud to like, oh, you need to be in the cloud. So the advantages here, there's a shared responsibility model around security. So I know that my cloud service provider is going to take care of that infrastructure, that environment, that type of area. And then I can design on top of that a secure platform. We can design software in a secure way. And, CapEx versus operating expense, we have a whole suite of different options as we build our services on this cloud provider. So we can pick one for maybe one component of our application, and we can pick another one that fits better needs on the other side. So it really just allows us to be very flexible and pick the tool that fits our requirements, fits our compliance and security goals, and we can manage the cost in that.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think that bringing it back around to what you get with your JumpCloud solution is it also gives you the flexibility to make those changes. If you make a decision on some cloud application and you regret it later and need to change to something else, that change is easy. And it's even easier because the underlying, security infrastructure of the directory and the identity and, the authorizations is already there, and it can support whatever direction you choose to go. You don't have to rip and replace. You don't have to re-architect much because you've got these things in place. All right, all right, so now that you've got JumpCloud there, you're doing it, what are the benefits that you're experiencing? What positive results have you been able to see?
Yeah, so a lot of this kind of these additional use cases, you know, we had this migration at the exact right time. This was, end of 2019, beginning of 2020. We were sending workforces home, and there was this whole new paradigm of like, how do we manage endpoints? We don't have a local LAN anymore, and how do I do inventory tracking? And then how do I make sure that patches are happening and these types of things? So there were a bunch of different things that just really naturally fit into that JumpCloud solution. We have all of the devices and endpoints that we need tracked in JumpCloud. We add them in there as we do onboardings. We have the systems insights that help us with understanding what that equipment is, what the patch level is. And then, you know, I know you've rolled out a new patch management capability. We haven't even started using that yet, but already with the ability to run commands, we were able to use PowerShell and Bash to be able to patch our endpoints using those commands. So we were able to automate a lot of this type of work from a remote area. And that, you know, we're a SOC 2 Type 2 compliant organization. This really helped us hit those goals and have a very smooth migration from, you know, everybody in the office to everybody spread out across the province.
And so it sounds like, and maybe I'm being, you know, drinking the JumpCloud Kool-Aid here, but it sounds like we were able to help you get everything that you had in mind before you even started the project. Maybe not everything, but you know, I'll claim everything. What do you think?
Yeah, it certainly did help. You know, back to you know, what we did with our previous tool. I always like to look at the tool set that we have, and if I can solve something with something that I already have, you know, it's SaaS. To Tyler's point, if we can turn on a new function, yeah, we'll do that.
Yeah, excellent. So Tyler, if you could, you know, Glenn's mentioned a lot of different things that he's doing through JumpCloud. Can you give us just a real brief thumbnail of what capabilities are available through the platform?
Oh man, okay.
I mean, you don't have to go deep, but you know, there's, you know,
Sure.
5 or 6 broad categories maybe.
No, absolutely. So the core pillars would be identity, the ability to onboard somebody from wherever they exist today. This could be your email provider, it could be a legacy AD, it could be an HRIS system, and extend these identities to everything else. So broad categories, it's single sign-on like we've been talking about, but anything that supports our protocols. Then we have an LDAP service to connect to firewalls, to print servers, to whatever still might live on premise. Then the network resources themselves, your radius servers to connect to your Wi-Fi or to your VPN. And then my favorite part is device management. I've mentioned this before, but it's Mac, Windows, Linux, and iOS, really treating them the same way. It's policies, like Glenn said, if you are savvy with Bash and PowerShell, you can literally do anything because we have a remote CLI. And you get your OS patching and your software management. And then all of this data, who's doing what, who granted a user access to this group, get that accountability to share this with your auditor. Like, here's everyone with access to AWS, and they're only accessing it with multi-factor. That's the fifth element here is MFA everywhere to your devices, to your networks. So those are just broad brushstrokes, but it is those are kind of the key protocols that we're using to secure an environment.
Yeah, you mentioned that, you know, you can get the initial identity from anywhere that you need to, you know, whether that's Active Directory, whether that's, you know, another IDP, whether it's your HR system. Glenn, did you, when you made this shift, so it sounds like now JumpCloud is the authoritative identity. Is there a system that you pulled that initial data from? And is there a system that is now feeding that data, like your HR system or whatever? Or are you just, is the initial provisioning happening right to JumpCloud?
Yeah, where we are in our maturity model is, we pulled this from our previous IDP and AD, which was synced into JumpCloud. There's a future thought or utopia where, everything's driven from that HRIS system and, through SCIM and a SAML, everything just gets provisioned down based on groups and these kind of things. So we're still working towards that goal, but it's something that's future and in progress.
Mm-hmm. Just out of curiosity, if you're willing to share, what HRIS system do you have?
We're currently working with Bamboo HR.
Okay. Yeah, I do know that. So Tyler, maybe you can talk just a bit for any of our Bamboo HR users out there, what we've got with them right now. I know we have a built-in connector that allows it to immediately, interface with JumpCloud to create people. Can you talk through that?
Sure. So this is really just a SCIM server, and SCIM is ideal for these sort of HRIS integrations because it facilitates CRUD operations, creating users, updating them. So you kind of have a choice. When you've embraced SCIM to bring people in from HR, you can use that to allow your HR people to deprovision a user. Like they put in their 2 weeks notice, they shouldn't have access to prod. They get flipped in HR to inactive or on the way out, whatever it's called. And this flows into JumpCloud and immediately revokes their access to anything that they had. So really it's a standard protocol, but this is, it gives you this kind of full user lifecycle management from wherever starting point that you want.
Mm-hmm. So just for those of you that may not be familiar with SCIM, it's a pretty common standard that the acronym SCIM stands for Standard for Cross-Domain Identity Management. And it's, think of it like SAML, only it's for the provisioning and the actual identity itself. So it allows the identity that exists in one place to be parlayed to a different place as long as they both ends of that transaction talk SCIM, much in the same way that SAML would allow you to authenticate as long as both ends of the transaction talk the same standard. So cool. All right, so Glenn, what's your next steps? You talked a little bit about integrating with HRIS, but what else have you got on your roadmap moving forward?
Yeah, I think the HRIS is one of those big ones. We are, vendor by vendor going through and trying to, as each vendor updates their ability, it's kind of an ongoing process. Oh, now this vendor supports either SAML or SCIM. We can move them from form-based into that. So basically building up that library so we have everything towards SCIM and SAML, and then moving towards automating some of our processes, which we manually kick off into something like this HRIS system where it could be an action could be taken by one of our HR people and everything kind of flows through. So there's a lot of pieces that we need to make sure are linked up and correct. And really it's just mapping those kind of manual processes and ensuring all of the different downstream vendors support what we need in order to kind of move into that direction.
Mm-hmm. I see the bullet here for consolidating IDP, SSO, and MFA. Are you eventually planning to consolidate all that within JumpCloud, or will you keep the legacy IDP you've got?
Yeah, I think there was maybe some confusion around that bullet point. Yeah, our legacy IDP has been gone for over a year. Yeah,
also, we're your IDP now.
Yeah, so it's just the legacy part of this, and I think the last bullet point really hits it, is some of the older co-location environments still are on AD, And once that's decommissioned, when we're fully in our cloud service, that'll just go away. So it's JumpCloud, some legacy in AD, and that's really it.
Mm-hmm. Do you have any indication of when you can fully walk away from AD? Is that like imminent? Is it 20 years away?
It's certainly not 20 years away, and I don't want to get caught with my foot in my mouth. You know how
Yes.
software development estimates kind of are, but yeah, let's say we're targeting kind of end of year ish for that to happen. So
awesome. You have I'm sure you'll have a lot of jealous colleagues when you've finally done that, and they'll think that they'll do it in 20 years. So awesome. All right, so what have you got, what have we got coming for you that you are looking forward to? It sounds like possibly the Bamboo HR integration is of value. Is there anything else that you've heard from us that you're excited for, or that, maybe even you had a hand in getting us to start to work on?
Yeah, I know initially that authentication app with push was really something that we were kind of missing, and that got filled in really quickly. And then, we have custom built for us some of the PowerShell and the command lines to pull some of the systems insights. I would say that's an improvement, especially for smaller organizations that maybe don't have that kind of skill set to be able to do that. Building that out within JumpCloud as more of a comprehensive report would really be helpful for those organizations. Certainly, I would love to consume it in that way, and it would make our compliance audits so much easier. But we have a way of getting at that data through the command line.
Awesome. So I had a question and it totally slipped my mind, so we'll skip that. All right, let's now go to the Q&A from the audience. I see that we have a couple of questions here, and feel free to type any questions you have in the chat if you want clarification on something, if you want us to go deeper on something, if you just have a question about something you've heard. Let's go for it. So the first one, let's give this one to Tyler. So can JumpCloud now do multi-factor and SSO for web apps similar to the way Duo and Okta do?
You had a last minute clarification, so I'm going to read this as well. Where web apps can be added in for MFA and SSO. Yeah, so absolutely. We are really supporting the same protocols as something like Okta or Duo in terms of how they're actually providing access into web apps. So that's SAML 2.0 and SCIM, and OpenID Connect is already on our roadmap for later this quarter. I'm allowed to say that because we've shared it publicly already, not promising things that aren't going to come out there. And then, yes, you do get this user portal. So right from your device, you can open your user portal from our JumpCloud Tray app passwordlessly. And you do your multi-factor, you see all of your different web applications there. You can still use a third-party MFA provider if you want, but we can also enforce either TOTP or, as Glenn noted, push for any of these applications as well. So very long way of saying, yes, we do the same things.
Well, and I know that we're also working on something that internally we're calling MFA Anywhere, which means that that same MFA solution could extend to, say, a radius use case as well. I don't know exactly when that comes out. It's not tomorrow, but that expanding of the umbrella of which the various services can touch is certainly happening. So here's a good question for Glenn. Let me scan up so I can read it again. What was the biggest roadblock for you when you went fully remote?
Yeah, that's a great question. And for us, we're an organization that really generally is very much online, and we're kind of positioned perfectly to be able to make that jump without a whole bunch of roadblocks. Aside from the, the physical movement of people taking their equipment home over into their own remote environments, the kind of utmost thing in my mind was like, how do we make sure that these endpoints are secure? How are we able to remotely support our users? So the piece that I would say JumpCloud helped us with is that kind of endpoint scanning and understanding where their patches were. And then, there's other things in kind of the IT organization that were things that we solved a little bit over time. Not so much roadblocks, but just changes in the ways that you think about an IT service organization. How do you support remote workers when they used to just bring their broken thing over to your IT person's desk? You can't send people all over the in our case, GTA, city or province, and thinking about ways of how we support those users. So a lot of it was remote, and then we brought in other service providers, which would help with equipment and warranty and service and these types of things.
Awesome. So kind of a follow-up question along those same line.
Sure.
Someone asked if you use JumpCloud to manage software on end user devices.
Absolutely, yeah. So, and this is even before the patch management. So, as an example, we have a number of different PowerShell scripts that will ensure certain things are up to date. Like, you can, with policy, do the browser updates, but Java is a good example. You want to make sure that if somebody has a need for Java to run an application on their workstation, we have a command that runs and ensures that it's up to date and forces the update. So we can very easily manage these things.
All right, here's a good one for Tyler. What separates the JumpCloud platform from something like Okta or Duo? What's the, why would somebody go with JumpCloud as opposed to those?
Sure. So we're not here to badmouth any other solution that's out there. Okta and Duo are great, but they have a narrow focus. They're really just single sign-on and multi-factor with some accountability of who's getting into those apps. So when you evaluate the protocols that they're using, we're all doing the same things here with SAML and SCIM and OpenID Connect or APIs. So pretty much apples to apples in terms of what they can do in user lifecycle, but we can do so much more. It's not virtual LDAP in JumpCloud. These are real LDAP servers. It's not, hey, we can integrate with your Radius server as long as you built the Radius server and you build out this proxy agent. So we've just consolidated a lot of these things into one comprehensive platform. So they go very deep in one area. We do that as well, and we do a lot more. So there always might be one-off features that we're not accounting for, but in a macro sense, it's really very similar offerings when you evaluate SSO and MFA as a standalone product, but JumpCloud kind of does everything else as well.
Yeah, so I think it's the difference between a solution for a specific use case and a solution for almost, I would say, a way of life. If you get the open directory, then a lot of options open up to you, including single sign-on or, the authentication end of what Duo or Okta is solving. But, they don't do the directory. They don't do the device management. Provisioning is super hard with them. So, yeah, excellent answer. Okay, here's another one for, either one of you can answer this. Can you address how to manage on-premises print servers without AD? Just add printers to users.
Glenn, if you've done that, you can always answer this, but there's a lot of different options that I can go through. So I'll tee you up if you're doing that today.
Yeah, so generally we don't have that use case because everybody's really remote, and there's it really doesn't fit kind of our workflow.
Okay, Yeah, but I mean, printers are terrible little pieces of technology. I think they're the thing that makes IT administrators the angriest. There's no one size fits all answer, but your general approach would be integrating with a print server, whether that's something that exists just as a part of the printer or a cloud service like PaperCut. You can integrate JumpCloud via LDAP to serve up users and say, these are the people that can get access to XYZ printer. You can also take the approach of commands. Let's just run a command that says this device can now talk to this printer at this IP address. So we will take it as it comes. If you have a specific question about how to integrate your printer, we can take a look at a custom solution, but either commands or LDAP are the primary methods.
Yeah, so here's another, it's a long one. I think maybe between the two of you, we can come up with an answer here. So it looks like, Tyler, you'll get to try to answer this one. Do you see that long one about if JumpCloud is being deployed on company-owned devices and or personal devices, in a remote workforce, how do you keep a separation and required controls between company/personal data when it can be more convenient to use a personal cell phone or personal computer the employees are more familiar with using?
The ever-present problem of bring your own device. So there's a couple of different key controls. Number one, you can install the JumpCloud agent onto a personal device and do some hardening of that system, but that is dangerous from a policy perspective for your business because we have the ability to fully wipe that device, right? So one of the easiest ways to make sure that corporate data or your most important corporate data is isolated to a corporate-owned computer is to take advantage of our conditional access policies. So you can set up something that says to access AWS and Salesforce and whatever other important web apps that you have, you must have this device trust certificate that comes as a part of the agent. So that allows somebody to, maybe you can get into your email from a personal device that is exempt from the policy, but your really important assets can only be accessed from this secured JumpCloud device. There's always wiggle room in these policies. It's an ever-present problem, but we do give you some controls to restrict access to the key things from the corporate-owned computer.
Yeah, so here's a question. I think it's for you, Glenn. Let me scan up so I can find it. What's the plan to take this, I'm assuming JumpCloud, further to expand into other solutions?
Plan to take JumpCloud further into other solutions. I don't know if there's anything additional than what we've kind of talked about. The solutions that we use it for today include SSO and MFA for access to really any of the resources that are within kind of the Firmex realm. That includes web services, that includes access through VPN into either our environments for development or production, or VPN into the office where needed. And then in terms of kind of next steps for us is, just some of those things that I talked about in terms of widening the scope of the services that are supporting SAML and kind of moving more towards all of them supporting that, and then an eventual move towards skim provisioning where possible. That's kind of the end goal of that automation.
So maybe that question I might have stated a little bit backwards. It doesn't sound like you have much need for JumpCloud to expand to anything, but any expansions you make, you're going to make with JumpCloud in mind, meaning that they're supported by your Open Directory platform.
Yeah, I would say it's kind of like this two-way street. It's like we have to work both with whatever our end vendor is and with JumpCloud to try and make sure, like generally, the generic SAML will work, but sometimes some vendors have a specialized workflow, or especially Tyler can probably speak to in the case of skim, There's certain kind of mappings that you need for certain situations. So really kind of connecting those two pieces. And then on the other side of it, growing to a size where a lot of vendors just won't give you that that type of functionality unless you're at that pro or enterprise type level. So some of it comes down to paying a little bit more, or talking to your AM.
Yeah, awesome. So let's wrap up. I have a question for each of you. So Glenn, if someone currently is in the state you were in years ago, looking to do this move to the cloud, regardless of whether JumpCloud's in the picture, what advice would you give them? What's the best piece of advice you would give a new person coming into this type of a world?
Yeah, right. So, obviously for me, I like to take a look at the tools around me, take inventory of what they can do, what they can't do, how does that fit against the requirements of the solution that you're looking for, and then, evaluate a few different solutions, try a POC. This is exactly how we came to JumpCloud. Somebody read something on the website that said, hey, they can do this, and we tried it, and hey, they were the one that was able to do this. The 10 for users really helped us out. Low cost, no cost. But we evaluated a bunch of them, and some will work and some will not. But you have to go out there and give it a try.
Awesome, perfect. And then Tyler, your question is, what advice would you give a JumpCloud newbie? So somebody's just, they just got the free 10 user thing, or they just have, started to use JumpCloud. What advice would you give them?
Sure. So use that 10 user free account. Like, I know that we keep stating this, but we know that JumpCloud works, and that's why you can use 10 users and 10 devices for free as long as you need to test it. So really just take stock of what's your most important challenge today. It's not going to be universal for everyone, but sync us up with your email provider, import a couple of dummy users, get the agent on a test device, just play around with it is always the first thing. If you want some more hands-on help, you can reach out to us. We will give you a tailored demo. We'll give you a testing plan. If you don't want to talk to us, I don't blame you all the time. You can look at some of our other resources. So we've got like JumpCloud University, where you can look at a specific module. How do I manage devices? How do I set up Radius? You can join our Slack lounge. You can talk to people like Glenn. Hey, how did you do this? So there's lots of different ways to engage with us. Our documentation is great. We do have certification. And if you just want to get your hands dirty, it's an open door. The playground is yours.
Awesome, thank you. All right, thank you everybody for attending. Thank you, Glenn. Thank you, Tyler, for your wonderful insights. I found this really valuable. I'm sure the rest of the audience did as well. Continue the conversation in the lounge. Check out our stuff on jumpcloud.com, and we'll see you at the next webinar. Thanks, everybody.
Please subscribe and check out more content from us.